Welcome to Sola Church Online.
I'm Alan Rigg. This is my wife, Miranda Landers, and together we lead Sola Church in Santa Monica, California.
We meet in person and online on Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Our in-person service is held at Joslyn Park Auditorium, which is at 633 Kensington Road.
And our pre-recorded online service can be found on our website, solachurch.life, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. That's at Sola Church LA.
And we have a great service for you today. Let's worship.
presence of my enemies. I raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. Heaven comes to fight for me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm, louder and louder. You're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will arise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I raise a hallelujah with everything inside of me. I raise a hallelujah. I will watch the darkness leave. I raise a hallelujah in the middle of the mystery. I raise a hallelujah. Fear you lost your hold on me. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm.
This is that time in our service when we worship with our giving. If you're just checking us out today, please don't feel obligated to participate. But if Sola Church is your church home, or if Sola Church Online has just been a blessing to you, it's super easy to make a one-time tax-deductible donation, or even to schedule a recurring gift.
The easiest way is to scan the QR code on your screen, but you can always go to solachurch.life and click the tab at the top that says Give.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick announcements. A reminder that I'm speaking at a men's breakfast at Refuge Calvary Chapel, Huntington Beach on Saturday, February 10th. So we've got a group of men from Sola Church that will be attending. If you're here local, encourage you to go, and if you want to carpool with us. Maybe you're closer to Huntington Beach than you are to Santa Monica. Go to their website. Again, that's Refuge Calvary Chapel, Huntington Beach. Register for the event there. I think it's $5 and get like a massive breakfast burrito as big as your face. It's
Beautiful building and campus too.
It is. It's super, super nice. So yeah, and then we've got our 2-year anniversary service. Of course, Sola Church Online's been around a little bit longer than that, but in person. So our 2-year in-person anniversary, February 18th. Got Easter Sunday and kind of relaunch Sunday. We'll talk more about that soon. That's March 31st. And then we'll be going together to Ripple Theater on April, I think it's the 14th or the 18th.
Right.
One or the other.
We love those. So fun going to Ripple.
So yeah, when we produce the service, we'll put some URLs at the bottom of the page to help you get to those websites. If you want to get tickets to Redlands, the Ripple Theater Redlands, you'll be able to do that there. But yeah, join us for some of that. Good times coming up.
Yes. Let's get into our time of teaching.
So who do you want to be in the new year? We've started every message this month with that question. And we're not even talking about resolutions. We're talking about aspirations. Like, who do you aspire to be? What do you aspire to do in 2024? As I've been reading this story and thinking about this message throughout the week, I've reflected on a quote by Howard Hendricks. Hendricks wrote, "The two factors that will influence you the most in the years ahead are the books you read and the people you're around." I want to focus on the second part of that. I want to talk about friends and friendship, about why it's important to have friends and how to make them and keep them. Let's go ahead and turn in the Bible to 1 Samuel chapter 18. We're calling this series in 1 and 2 Samuel Outliers. What is an outlier? Well, if everything in the group is like this, the outlier is like that. If everything in the group is like that, the outlier is like this. So for our purposes, by outliers, we mean imperfect people, because we're all imperfect people living imperfect lives. So we mean imperfect people who have found another way of being in this broken world, a way made possible by this loving, giving, forgiving God we meet in the pages of the Bible. So throughout the month, like we started out with a message called Stop Digging. We said that if we're going to be who we want to be and do what we want to do, and we find ourselves in a hole, the first thing we have to do is stop digging. And then in our next message, we talked about the need to get small. We talked about how important it is to be present, to be in the moment, even in the smaller seasons of life, even when we've experienced a setback, like not to underestimate the big differences that even small changes can make. But then last week, we shared a message about taking down giants. Like if it's passive to stop digging and even to get small, there's something very active about taking down giants. Like at some point, we have to get proactive and intentional and deliberate about going after the big challenges in our lives. Today, we want to talk about the need to focus on friendship. And that's going to be a very important piece of taking on the biggest challenges in life. If you're local, maybe you've heard of the Santa Monica stairs. I'll try to drop a picture into the service when we produce it. It actually refers to two well-known stairways that descend from Santa Monica to the Santa Monica Canyon. And I'm thinking in particular of the one that has its upper end across from Adelaide Drive, and then the lower end is on Entrada Drive. It's like 170 steps from bottom to top, all but 18 of them wooden steps. It's just a long, straight staircase. And so here's the idea. I'm adapting this from something I heard John Maxwell say. If we're going to climb the Santa Monica stairs, we could do that all by ourselves. Like we can go from the bottom step to the 170th step all by ourselves. We're going to feel the burn, but we can do it by ourselves. However, if we're going to climb Mount Everest, not so much. Yeah, you're not getting to the peak of Everest by yourself. Like if we're going to tackle Everest, we're going to have to do that as part of a team. And so, it's funny that with technology, we're more connected than we've ever been. So why this feeling of disconnectedness? For so many of us, the truth is we have many acquaintances, but few friends, or maybe even no friends at all. So let's focus on friendship. I want to share 5 thoughts about the importance of friendship, about how to make and keep friends. The first we're going to call lead off. So check it out, chapter 18, beginning in verse 1. Now, when he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him go home to his father's house anymore. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. Now, just a reminder, David killed Goliath in chapter 17. We learn here in verse 2 that he can now quit his day job. So he no longer has to go back and forth from the palace to the pasture, to the palace to the pasture. He's just there at the palace where he is a musician for King Saul and where he is Saul's armor bearer. None of that is even the best thing about the verses we just read. The best thing is how Jonathan and David became fast friends. In fact, in the Message, which is sort of a paraphrase, that first verse, it says that Jonathan was deeply impressed with David. An immediate bond was forged between them. He became totally committed to David. From that point on, he would be David's number one advocate and friend. I love that. Now in verse 3, when it says that Jonathan and David made a covenant, I'm not sure exactly what that means. Like, do they spit in their hands and then shake on it? Did they become blood brothers? Did they cut themselves and mingle their blood? I'm not sure exactly how they did that. But throughout this time together, I'm going to quote some Proverbs. Proverbs might be the greatest Bible book on the subject of friendship. So we're going to bring in lots of Proverbs quotes. The first of those comes from Proverbs 12, verse 26. It says, "The righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray." So my point today isn't just that we need to choose friends, but in part that we need to choose friends carefully. Like there's a New Testament verse that sort of builds on this. In 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33, it says, "Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits." Now, you might have heard me say this before, but anytime you see the words "do not be deceived," that's like a big, giant red flag. Those words are only there because what follows is something that we are very likely to be deceived about. So again, that verse, "do not be deceived." The red flag is being waved to get our attention. Evil company corrupts good habits. Some of us think we're the exception to the rule. Some of us think that we're the one person of faith who can spend almost all of our time with people with radically different values and not ever be affected by that. It's not true. We have to ask ourselves, what kind of person do I want to become? And then build a team of people around us like that. People like that to play alongside of us. People like that to cheer us on. People like that to coach us. Why did I call this first point lead off? Well, in verse 1, it says that Jonathan loved him, that is, loved David. The Hebrew verb translated loved him is expressed in the active voice. So Jonathan is the one acting. You'll notice in verse 3, it says, because he, that is Jonathan, loved him, that is David. So in some sense, Jonathan initiated. Proverbs 18, verse 24 says, "A man who has friends must himself be friendly." That is maybe the greatest verse on friendship in the entire Bible. If you like to underline in your Bible, I would underline that verse. There are some people who are friendless because they aren't friendly in the sense that they don't initiate. They may be the ones who complain after a church service. "No one said hi to me. No one sat next to me. No one invited me to lunch." And you know how I'll challenge a person like that sometimes is I'll say well, who did you say hi to? Who did you sit by? Who did you invite to lunch? The funny thing about it is that the people that might have let us down are feeling let down by us. Like they're having the same conversations with other people about how no one said hi to them, no one sat next to them, no one invited them to church. You know why some spaces are not friendly? Well, maybe because we're not friendly when we enter them. So we said that there are some people who are friendless because they aren't friendly. But then there are other people who are friendless because they're unfriendly. You've met them. We've all met someone and thought to ourselves, I just met you and I'm already looking for an exit strategy. Like it's no wonder that you're having a hard time making friends. Stuart Briscoe said you can choose to be a friend, but not to have a friend. Let's just think about that together. We can't say, I choose to have friends. We really can't control that. We can be open to it, but we can't control other people. But we can say, I choose to be a friend. Like that's within our power. We have control of that, to be a friend. People who fall into the first group, people who struggle with this, they feel that because they choose someone to have as a friend, that they somehow obligate the friend that they choose. Nope, that's not how it works. We have to choose to be a friend. So we said before that, we want to identify people that we would love to make a part of our friend group. But then we need to choose to be a friend to them. And if they reciprocate, great. And if they don't, there's nothing wrong with that. So I can't have the mentality, I want you to be my friend. I have to have the mentality, I want to be a friend to you. Dale Carnegie said we can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in us. So a formula for friendship, man, we're focusing on friendship. Number 1, lead off. Number 2, add value. Look at verse 4. Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David with his armor, even to his sword and his bow and his belt. So you notice that phrase in verse 4, and gave it. I think about that book by Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages. Maybe you've heard of it. Great read, recommend it. He has this idea, that there are different things that say, I love you to different people. And so he's identified 5 different categories of things that say, I love you. 1, words of affirmation. 2, quality time. 3, acts of service. 4, physical touch. And 5, gifts. Now you might just think about or even have a conversation with someone about, what are your number 1 and number 2 love languages. For me, gifts are not my number 1 love language. But having said that, who doesn't like receiving a gift? Proverbs 19 verse 6 says, every man is a friend to one who gives gifts. Like, what's not to like, right? And yes, a gift is a visible symbol of love. After all, when God wanted to show us how much he loves us, what did he do? John 3 verse 16 says, God so loved the world that he gave. He gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. I remember some years ago when I pastored in Austin, Texas, I was an avid mountain biker. And I had put a new bike on layaway. Remember layaway? That's probably the last thing I bought on layaway, and it's been a minute. But layaway, is where you'd sort of make a deposit on something, and so they'd take it off the floor and put it in the back with your name on it, and you'd keep coming and making payments until it was paid for, and then when it was paid for, you could take it home. So I had started this process knowing that I had some money coming, or at least thinking that I did, and you know how life goes. That sort of thing doesn't always work out the way you think it's going to, and so it was at that point, where the balance was due. I still owed a couple $100. I didn't have it, and it was due. It was time to finish it off. So I got a call from the bike shop, and they this is so-and-so from such and such. And so right away I interrupted because I knew why they were calling. I knew I was in trouble. So I was like, hey man, I know I still owe you a couple $100, and I think I'm going to have it like in the next week or so. If you could just give me a little more time. And he's like, no, wait. Someone came and paid the balance. All you need to do is come and pick up your bike. I was floored. A friend who knew my situation had gone to the bike shop, unknown to me, and had spent a couple $100s of his own money to pay the balance, and he didn't even want it back. It was a gift. Like, it was the most amazing thing. He didn't even tell me he did it after the fact. I just sort of figured out who I thought it might be, and he admitted it when I when I brought it to his attention. So I got to say, I mean, you don't forget a thing like that. I felt the love when that happened, and I still feel all the good vibes. I still have all the feels these years later. Well, maybe we could talk for a moment about Jonathan's robe. It talks about Jonathan giving David his robe. This refers to a sleeveless pullover that was worn over the tunic by people of rank. Kind of interesting, because back in chapter 15, when Samuel had told Saul that, he was to be replaced as king, Saul had reached out and grabbed Samuel's robe, the same Hebrew word, the same kind of robe, and it had torn in his hand. And so that's, when Samuel had told him that it was the kingdom was being torn from him. And so here is Jonathan giving that robe to, his own robe to David. In effect, he was transferring his own status to David. So he empowered David, but not only did he empower David, he also equipped him. It goes on to say that he gave David his armor, his sword, his bow, his belt. Back in chapter 13, we learned that, only in all of the army of Israel, only Saul and Jonathan even had swords. So now there's still only two people that have swords, but David is one of them. And so he empowered David and he equipped David, but he also enriched David, which is to say that he added value to David. He made David more than he was. Like, this has all the Prince and Pauper vibes, right? I think about my relationships. I mean, certainly starting with, and most importantly, relationships with members of my family, but with our focus on friendship, I think about my friendships. I think about the people that I've known, the friends that I've had over the years. And I've had so many friends who made me better. And I hope that many of them look back and feel like they're better for having known me. So focus on friendship. We need to lead off. We need to add value. Number 3, build up. So we're going to jump to chapter 19 and pick it up in verse 1. It says, "Now Saul spoke to Jonathan his son and to all his servants, that is, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted greatly in David. So Jonathan told David, saying, My father Saul seeks to kill you. Therefore, please be on your guard until morning, and stay in a secret place and hide. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you. Then what I observe, I will tell you." Then Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, "Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his works have been very good toward you. For he took his life in his hands and killed the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great deliverance for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood to kill David without a cause?" So Saul heeded the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, "As the Lord lives, he shall not be killed." Then Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these things. So Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. Now let me just fill in a little bit of what we jumped over. Back in chapter 18, verse 7, it says that the women sang as they danced and said, "Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000. So it was like a song. It was number one on all the streaming services, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora. Everybody's listening to this song about how Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000. Saul didn't like that. Saul was jealous, he felt threatened, and he wasn't having it. So starting in verse 10 of that 18th chapter, he tried to kill David. And then starting in verse 17, he tried to have David killed. Meanwhile, Saul's daughter, Michal, falls in love with David and they're married. Talk about issues with the in-laws. Oh, man. Well, that brings us to chapter 19, which we just read from, where Saul's desire to kill David has gone from covert to overt. But notice in verse 4 that Jonathan spoke well of David. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "A friend is a person who goes around saying nice things about you behind your back." I love that. And it's nice to have people like that. It was easy for Jonathan to do. Why? Because, well, as it said in verse 1, Jonathan delighted greatly in David. That Hebrew word, the Hebrew verb that is, translated delighted, it's one of several words that might have been used. And of those, it's the one that indicates the greatest emotional involvement. Like part of the meaning of the word, so sort of nuanced, but part of the meaning of the word is that the object, in this case David, solicits favor by its own intrinsic qualities. So you could say that Jonathan had deep respect for David. He admired him, he esteemed him, he valued him. Proverbs 16 verse 28 says, a perverse man sows strife and a whisperer separates the best of friends. Proverbs 17 verse 9 says, he who covers a transgression seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates friends. Now, the reason I shared those two Proverbs, which may seem sort of disjointed from what came before it, it's just that sometimes I'm shocked by the things one person will say about another. Like sometimes I'm shocked at the things one spouse will say about another. And other times I'm shocked by the things that a parent will say about their children. But still other times I'm shocked by the things that one friend will say about another. We should build one another up. So do you enhance your friend's reputation or do you diminish it? Is your friend respected because of you or in spite of you? Focusing on friendship, we want to lead off, we want to add value, we want to build up. Then number 4, we want to meet needs. Now we're jumping to chapter 20 and verse 1. Yeah, we're clipping along now. So it says, then David fled from Naioth in Ramah and went and said to Jonathan, what have I done? What is my iniquity? And what is my sin before your father, that he seeks my life? So Jonathan said to him, by no means, you shall not die. Indeed, my father will do nothing, either great or small, without first telling me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so. Then David took an oath again and said, your father certainly knows that I have found favor in your eyes. And he has said, do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death. So Jonathan said to David, whatever you yourself desire, I will do it for you. Now again, to fill in the blanks, because we jumped over some text. In chapter 19, beginning in verse 8, Saul tried again to kill David. And then beginning in verse 11, Saul tried again to have David killed, this time by hiring hitmen. And it was Saul's daughter, David's wife, Michal, who helped him escape. But so as we come into chapter 20, in the verses that we just read, David is fragile and his words are emotionally charged. To quote Ralph Waldo Emerson again, a friend is one before whom I may think aloud. That's such a great quote because it's an amazing thing to have people that you can think aloud with. There are times, right, when your first thought isn't your best thought. And it's so great to have people that we can think out loud with. But there are other people that we can't speak freely to until we've completely processed something. It's like we're on eggshells. We can never let our guard down. But when you have people who love you and who accept you unconditionally and with whom you're comfortable enough to say the first thing that comes to your mind, even if it's not the best thing, man, that's amazing. There was an author, a woman named Mary Ann Evans, a 19th century English novelist. She actually wrote under the pen name George Eliot. But listen to what she wrote. Oh, the comfort, the inexpressible comfort of feeling safe with a person, having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words, but to pour them all out just as they are, chaff and grain together, knowing that a faithful hand will take and sift them, keep what is worth keeping, and then with a breath of kindness, blow the rest away. What a great quote. And I'm so thankful for people like that in my life. Notice what Jonathan said to David, whatever you yourself desire, I will do it for you. He doesn't correct David. He doesn't scold David. He doesn't give David unsolicited advice. Instead, he's like, what can I do? How can I help? What needs can I meet? And Jonathan was no fair weather friend. Jonathan had a lot to lose. Remember that David's enemy was Jonathan's own father. Proverbs 17, verse 17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs 27 verse 10 says, do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, nor go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. It's been said that you find out who your friends are when you move. And I would add, you find out who your friends are when you get divorced. But maybe to broaden that a little bit, you find out who your friends are when you suffer. And David learned in the midst of suffering that Jonathan was his friend. Going forward in this chapter, beginning in verse 5, they came up with a plan together for Jonathan to confirm Saul's intentions. And then beginning in verse 24, they executed that plan. The result was Jonathan discovered that his father did indeed still plan to kill David. So David and Jonathan have a prearranged rendezvous. Jonathan shares the intel, and the most touching part comes in verse 41. If you look all the way ahead to verse 41, it says, David arose from a place toward the south where he'd been hiding and waiting. He fell in his face to the ground and bowed down 3 times. And they kissed one another, and they wept together, but David more so. This kiss was a customary kiss, like they still do in some parts of the world. And so they kissed, and then they wept. David was going to be a fugitive going forward. And these two part company, not knowing when or if they would ever see each other again. Now, remember, we learned that in some ways it was Jonathan who initiated this friendship. We're told that he proactively loved David. But here it's touching that, David is the one who wept the most. And in verse 42, Jonathan said to David, go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, may the Lord be between you and me, between your descendants and my descendants forever. So he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. Looking at this, we've got this focus on friendship, this formula. We want to lead off, we want to add value, we want to build up, and we want to meet needs. Be a good listener. Love unconditionally, accept, not make judgments, just meet the needs that the person has. It's such a great thing. And then fifth and finally, we want to give encouragement. So now we're going to go beyond even the text that we're technically covering today. I want you to turn all the way to chapter 23. I'm going to begin reading in verse 16. In between, David has, lived as a fugitive. He's fugitive, chapter 21, fugitive, chapter 22, fugitive as we begin chapter 23. And in verse 16, it says, then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, do not fear, for the hand of Saul, my father, shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that. So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. So some time has passed. But notice it says that Jonathan strengthened that is David's hand in God. That's there in verse 16. That is to say that he encouraged David. We're going to talk more about encouragement, but how did he do that? Well, he encouraged David not to be afraid. He encouraged David by assuring him of his safety. And then notice in verse 17, he says, you shall be king over Israel. That's powerful. To look at David, a fugitive in that moment. Oh man. He was far from the palace now, deep in the woods in hiding. The army is coming for him. Hitmen are coming for him. It does not appear to the casual onlooker that David is on the verge of anything good. But Jonathan looks at him and sees what no one else could see. He sees what David himself could not possibly have seen in this moment. There's something so powerful about having people in our life who see in us what we can't always see in ourselves, who help us believe that God's call on our life will become a reality, even when there's no visible evidence of that. So encouraging. And notice in verse 17, he adds, and I shall be next to you. Keep in mind who Jonathan was. Jonathan was the king's son. He was the heir apparent, but he instead is taking this second place. Leonard Bernstein, the 20th century American conductor, was asked what the most difficult instrument is. Here is his answer: the second fiddle. I can get plenty of first violins, but to find someone who can play the second fiddle with enthusiasm, that's a problem. And if we have no second fiddle, we have no harmony. We all need to have a friend like that. We all need to have a friend who's willing to play second fiddle, who rather than wanting to compete with us, just wants to encourage us. John Maxwell, who I mentioned earlier in my message, said, encouragement is oxygen for the soul. I think he's right. You know how much you need oxygen. Like, how long can you hold your breath? I mean, about 30 seconds and I'm dying. Well, your soul's need for oxygen is like that. We need encouragement to thrive. Our emotional reservoir must be frequently filled with encouraging words. You know, there was this guy named Dawson Trotman, and he died some decades ago, but he was the founder of an organization called the Navigators. That's an organization that still exists that's focused on Christian discipleship, you know, spiritual formation. And so he was known for his friendships, for the people that he mentored, for the difference that he'd made in people's lives. He actually died in Schroon Lake, New York, and he drowned, which is ironic because he was an expert swimmer. But in the last few moments of his life, he actually saved a couple of drowning girls. It said that he lifted one girl out of the water, and then he went down and got the other girl and lifted her up out of the water, and then he submerged and was not found again until the dragnet found his body a few hours later. The following week, Time Magazine ran an article, that is, on Trotman's life, and they put a caption beneath his name. It read, "Always holding somebody up." It was said that that was Trotman's life, investing in people, holding them up. Are we doing that? Are we holding others up? Jonathan was holding David up. And you know, as we read the verses we just read, I mean, David could not have known it in that moment, but he would never see Jonathan again on this earth, in this life. You know, in 2 Samuel chapter 1, when David learns about Jonathan's death on the battlefield, David says, "How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan was slain in your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was wonderful, surpassing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen and the weapons of war perished." There's no doubt these two had a very special relationship. Their friendship ran deep, and David felt the loss deeply. But this man, Jonathan, man, he teaches us what it means to be a friend, to lead off, taking initiative, to add value, finding ways to make others better, to build up, to be that person who, you know, builds other people up with what we say, not only to them, but about them, meeting needs, you know, not being quick to correct and quick to confront and quick to find fault and quick to make judgments, but to just be quick to be there, to be a good listener, to care, to serve, and then give encouragement, to be that person who sees in others what they can't see in themselves, to see it when they can't. Such a beautiful thing. You know, in Ecclesiastes 4 verses 9 and 10, it says 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to hold him up. And so we said, kind of a key thought sort of thing, that, you know, the thing that will impact us or influence us the most in the year ahead is the books we read and the people that we're with. And we focused on the second part of that, on friends, on friendship. It is important for us to have friends. It's important that we know how to make friends and how to keep friends. And may 2024 be a year for you in which you can make new friends and where you can go deeper with old friends and where you can maybe even reconcile with estranged friends, and, you know, where the friendships in our lives can make the difference. It can make a difference for us, and it can make a difference for them and that beautiful reciprocity. May God bless your friendships in 2024. Father, I pray that right now. I pray that you would bless the friendships of everyone watching this online service. I pray, as I suggested, for new friends and for old friends and for deeper friends. And Lord, that not only would we receive everything that we need to receive in the context of friendships, but that most importantly, we would decide right now to be good friends. That we would make up our minds that we want to be and do these things in the lives of the people around us. And Lord, I think that, man, if we do that, we're going to be such a blessing. And no doubt lots of good energy is going to come back our way. We're thankful for that in advance. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
And now it's time to fill out a Connect card.
Yeah, just go to our website, solachurch.life, scroll to the bottom of the homepage. That's where the Connect card lives. And that's how you can let us know that you watched Sola Church online today. And it's also where you can request information about our virtual small groups. I can't stress enough how much we'd like everyone to be a part of those. We've got a couple of them on Tuesday night, the virtual groups. We've got an in-person group too, but the virtual groups are great for those of you that watch from other parts of the country. We've got one that's ideally suited for people in the central time zone, but could even work for people in the eastern time zone. So hit us up, fill out that Connect card, and we'll get you the info.
If you've ever thought about joining a small group, come and try it one time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, it's the best day of the week.
Yeah.
We really have a great conversation. And don't forget to go and follow Sola Church on social media.
Yeah, totally. It's at Sola Church LA on all your favorite platforms. But just as importantly as going there and giving us a follow or a like is interacting with us there. Like, help us get our posts some traction by liking specific posts and commenting and tagging people and sharing. That's what will really kind of help us take our social game to the next level.
It makes a big difference. Yeah. Thank you in advance for doing that. And we hope you have a great week, and we will see you next time at Sola Church Online.
Bye, everybody.